Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'll be your host today, and we're going to be talking about how there is no game marketing playbook. All right, so there's no shortage of people telling developers how to market their games. But you know what? Ask a few, and there's probably a good chance you're going to get different answers on what's best for you in that moment. So today, we're going to unpack why most game marketing advice is so fragmented and how you can evaluate different and competing advice and identify the key principles that help make better marketing decisions based on your specific needs, audience, and your game, allowing you to create your own playbook. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey everyone, and we're back, and today with us I have Rand Fishkin. Rand, how's it going? And hey, thanks so much for being here today.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Of course. You know, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Rand, he is the co-founder and CEO of Snack Bar Studio. They're making a really interesting project that I know we're going to dive into detail a little bit more soon. But Rand is also a co-founder and CEO of Sparkturo, Alert Mouse. And if they don't sound familiar, it's because they're in different spaces, but still within marketing and such. And I'm going to hand it over to Rand to talk about, of course, Snack Bar Studio, what's a cool project that they're working on, but also maybe, share a little bit about his past experiences and stuff. And just to give you an idea of where he's coming at as being a fun new studio that's creating this awesome project. So Rand, Snack Bar, what are you guys building?
Yeah. So Snack Bar Studio, I guess, is technically my fourth company. Came out of an interest and passion that I had had for a long time. I always dreamt of making a video game, but during COVID, I really went deep down the rabbit hole, Andrew, from I'm sort of a nerd, right? So I went down that from a stats perspective. I was like, oh, let me see if we can, can I crawl and index all the games that have ever been published on Steam? And then let me try and extract all of those that have fewer than 250 reviews. And then let me take a look at the sales numbers that have been publicly reported by all the other ones. I worked with a couple buddies here in Seattle, actually the guys I started Alert Mouse with, and we did this big analysis of every game that had ever launched on Steam who had publicly announced their sales on any given day.
Nice.
And then we tried to reverse engineer, okay, how many views did their YouTube videos have on that day that they announced their sales, and how many reviews did they have on that day on Steam, and what was the sentiment of those reviews, and what was the concurrent count of users, blah, 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 just a whole bunch of math. And the net of this long process was basically man, games looks like a really, really compelling field. It is the thing that got me super excited about it as compared to every single other artistic business endeavor that one might consider. So plays, movies, television, books, comics, you name it, is that sales is strongly correlated to quality. This is one of my, whenever I talk to folks about the game, I'm always like, hey, do you think that the absolute best, the highest quality, best written play has ever been performed? I bet it hasn't. Yeah. I bet if it has been performed, I bet if it's even seen one night at a theater, probably never got another one. The same thing is true of music. I bet the best artists and musicians, they make no money, they have no success, right? And this is true for every single person who's in movies and television is related to someone who was in movies and television, 50 years ago, right? The Nepo baby thing is super real. I've seen a bunch of Reddit analyses of those. But games is not that way. The door is not only open for anyone to create a game. If you create a great game, even without a lot of marketing, it often does extremely well. And this was the thing that really shocked us when we did this analysis. We were like, hey, there's a few games that are really good and didn't sell well. but they're in the minority. And in every other artistic field, that's not true. So this is what got us excited about the idea of making a game. And then Geraldine and I sort of came up with the concept for Snack Bar a few years ago. In 2024, we raised money for it and started building a team. And we're about to announce that that the game will be coming out next year. So a little bit of a preview, but we'll have the trailer out later this year.
You know, I absolutely love that you shared that too. That whole process. As you were sharing it, it reminded me of what was it? Geez, I can't think of the author right now. But Good to Great.
Oh, sure.
Yes, that
Jim Collins.
Yeah, thank you. I was gonna say James Clear, and I'm like, it's not James Clear. But yeah, Jim Collins. But it's like it's really cool because of that whole process, and then at the end though, how you're able to really distill it to that, which I think is helpful because sometimes we get this idea is you got to make a great game, but it's also subjective. But then when you have that context and understanding behind it, it makes that point, but also in a way that you can properly comprehend in terms of what that is and everything else. And I think it's a fascinating way to come about it too, because I can't say that it would be unique just for someone like yourself to approach it that way. I'm sure lots of developers have done the same thing too, of course, and everything. So it's very relatable. And even myself, some ways, try to look at things from that lens and different perspectives and such. So
I love a stats approach. I think obviously I'm passionate about it just from the love of the game side of things, but there is something powerful to being able to overcome a lot of your fears and objections through math.
Yeah, through math, analysis, and validation, and all those other things that are just as important as the passion and the drive behind it. I can't wait till we get into that. But before we do that, I'm sorry, I got to throw you in the Q box round. And folks of you who aren't familiar, which you probably are, just a couple random questions here I got for Rand. So Rand, the question is, are you ready?
Oh, let's do it.
All right. First one is, what is your biggest gaming pet peeve?
What is my biggest
gaming pet peeve? Pet peeve.
Gaming pet peeve.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same one that I have in movies and television, which is the core rule of any storytelling project is show, don't tell.
That's such a good one.
Don't tell me that we are in a dystopian universe. Show me.
Yep.
Show me how it's dystopian. Don't tell me that Dark Lord is taking over the world. Like, show me that that's happening. I despise these long introductory statements, or even worse, inside a game, inside a television show, inside a movie, the sort of external third party monologuing to explain what's going on.
Oh yeah. Info dumps.
As though the audience is just mindless zombies who can't follow a plot.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
I share that.
That's the one I hate.
And that's such a good one too. And I feel like I use that so regularly in like show don't tell type thing. But it's also important because I know part of I think probably the problem why we see so much of that too is because it can be very difficult to discern or determine how is showing different from telling and stuff. But
I think about it this way, right? Everyone in games field, even someone who's just ever played a game, can imagine that if a trailer, right, if an advertisement for a game said, this is an incredibly fun game, you will get to do these things inside the game, you're going to have a great time. It's really enjoyable. You'll feel like it's the best $20 you spent. And then they don't show you the game at all.
Yeah. Yep.
No one's buying it.
Yeah.
No one believes it. That is crazy, right? It's absurd. And yet somehow when people get into storytelling mode, they lose sight of that. And instead of showing and illustrating a character's journey or an emotion that they're feeling, they say, Brad felt sad. What? Just don't tell me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, definitely appreciate that concrete example because that is a very clear one. And it's like, okay, I can pick up on how that's telling versus showing. All right. Next is, what's the one major thing you would want to accomplish in your lifetime?
Oh man, I mean, I've always felt the that the sort of purpose of life, anyone's life, everyone's life, certainly my life, is to lift other people up. And so I would love to know that at the end of my journey, there are lots of people, hopefully not just hundreds or thousands, who would say like, oh, he made a big difference to my life. Like my life is better, my kid's life is better, the next generation's life is better because of contributions that he made or things that he did or stuff that he showed me, or I don't know, a path that opened up. That would make me very happy.
Awesome. And I love hearing that too. It's such a great one right there.
Oh,
and
thanks.
Last but not least, and the staple here on the show is, what games are you playing now? Or game. It's game, but lately everybody's been sharing like lots of games that they're playing.
Yeah. I think as an indie developer, I download and play 15 minutes of a ton of games, right? But I will say, like most folks, I got addicted to Balatro for a good bit. Geraldine and I played Scarlet Deer Inn.
Okay.
Which I was very impressed with. They did a wonderful job. Good job of a game that does not tell, but it shows. It's sort of a narrative side scroller, semi Metroidvania. All the characters and all of the illustration are stitched. It's like stitched artwork and then scans of those stitchings taken and put directly in the game.
Oh, nice.
Which is a wonderful concept and got them a ton of social media love. I think it hasn't translated into game sales quite as well as I would have hoped, but the game itself is good too. So I do recommend checking that out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
very impressive.
Thank you for sharing those titles, but also sharing those answers with us so we could get to know you a little bit more. But now let's get right into the conversation, which in what I led folks with the intro is there is no real game marketing playbook. All right. And I know I'm not going to digress and blab on about anything else. We're just going to kick things off and kind of unveil this topic here. And starting with Rand, you've probably heard of no short of different opinions, maybe even conflicting opinions, and how to market your game. Because, it's a new project for you and you're doing everything to gather all the data and stuff like you've been saying. Why do you think, though, that advice, and maybe from your own experience, why some of the advice that you have been receiving is so fragmented?
Yeah, that is tough to theorize about right now. I wish I had a little bit more experience to be able to say that, but I can say, Andrew, for sure, obviously I've been in marketing my entire career, 25 years, and have worked on tons of B2B and consumer products, direct to consumer, retail, local small business, software, hardware, services, like all of it.
Yeah. And
in all of those fields, there is much more of an established playbook than there is in marketing, in games marketing. And if I had to theorize about why that is, I would say that it is one reason it's so very different is because indie games marketing playbook. If you're a big company selling a huge, multi-$100 million game, the playbook is pretty established. And that is, similar to a lot of other large consumer products. But indie games, almost no one is a professional marketer in this field. Very few indie games hire professional marketers to do the work. Those that do get dramatically different advice, I think, because there are a lot of ways to skin this cat. Very frankly, we have heard every opinion. We've talked to 17 different games marketing consultants and agencies, a bunch more than that, but 17 that I got on calls with and had them pitch me and got a deck and reviewed it and tried to figure out, okay, who are we going to work with? Who do we think is right for this? And to your point, man, here's a really simple one. Does traditional games media, your GameSpots and Kotakus and those kinds of guys, PC Gamer, do they matter at all for indie games? And I have heard everything from they are completely useless, you should ignore them entirely, which is a common opinion on the indie game subreddit, for example, to They're incredibly important. Ignore them at your peril. Danger. Don't skip these guys. They're still how a ton of the initial flow of wish lists happens for games. And, and then lots of things in the middle, like, well, they don't matter that much, but they do here and there, and which one is correct? Right. My guess is there are many games that have been very successful and super helped out by traditional games media. And there are plenty that have been incredibly successful with no games media at all. And so the answer is, it depends.
I was already thinking the answer as you were getting to it. But yeah, I mean, it's a good point. And yes, that's a very specific exact example. But I mean, that answer basically applies across the board.
Yeah, every single thing. Oh my God, events, right? So like some of the agencies were huge on events. They're like, my God, you cannot miss out on showcases. You have to do them, super important. And some were like, showcases, don't just ignore them. Like it's really not going to be helpful unless you're in this very specific field and you're going after this super specific genre and type. And it's more important to have like the great trailer and all the marketing beats and that kind of stuff. Should you avoid timing your game's announcement around other big games that are announcing or coming out?
Yep.
And again, widely varying opinion. There's people who are like, it matters not at all. And there's other people who are like, you'll kill yourself if you do it. Honestly, I don't know which one's correct. There's lots of people, we talked to a bunch of folks who told us that paid media for games was a terrible idea. For an indie game like ours, taking a chunk of your relatively small budget and putting it into paid media, not a good idea. And then we heard from some folks who were like, well, actually, if these things are true, right? If you're essentially, if your trailer views on YouTube correspond highly to your wish lists in a ratio that you can kind of measure and see, you should be spending on paid media in these places in these ways, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, I get it. Okay. So the variety of opinions, the approaches, all over the place, and really different from my previous world of like SEO and digital marketing, where people went, should I rank number one in Google for the keywords that my customers type in? Yes, you should.
Yeah, very clear.
Yeah, there was no one who was like, nah, that's a waste of time. Don't do it.
Yeah, no, and it's really fascinating too. And then kind of to dive into this a little bit further, just from some of the examples you've been, sharing and everything, how are you, I guess, going about determining kind of either what's worth testing or what fits best for you, your studio, for the product, for the game?
Yeah, we have been, basically taking a almost two views on this. So one is, if there is an answer to one of these questions around games marketing that we can answer with research and data and talking to people and sort of analyzing the field, we will do that and then try and get an answer, a rough answer from those things. So for example, the paid media one, this was an example where we did talk to and were able to read a bunch of case studies and see some interviews with people who did some indie games paid media, and they reported on how Reddit ads perform for them, or how YouTube ads perform for them, or how Meta ads perform for them. And while there was a variety of things, there was definitely an agreement that if your basically video views to or trailer views to wish lists corresponds in a cohesive, coherent way, there is an amount of money that you can probably spend in some of those platforms to get a positive return on investment. And then the second one is, when we can't determine that, or when the answer seems to be, it depends, then we go with an experimental approach. So for example, like showcases is something where we really don't have the answer. We're not sure at all. And in that case, in the case of Snack Bar, we decided against using a showcase as an experiment. Like we're gonna try no showcase first, and then when our demo comes out next year, we'll probably do a showcase for that. So like playing both sides. Like, let's see what happens if we announce with no showcase. Let's see what happens if our demo is in a showcase. We'll find out, right? We'll learn a lot from that, I'm sure. I think that the frustrating part is we really, really need this game to be a success, which I think is true of a lot of indie studios, right? Your first game determines whether the studio gets to keep on living and whether you can keep producing games. So it's a high risk operation. Every time I make a call about something, it comes in. I'll tell you, Andrew, one of the most fascinating ones was the theory that using existing recognized music in your trailer is more likely to get you more trailer views and thus more wish lists. And also it amplifies your trailer's reach on YouTube because people, even some people who are not necessarily watching for the game, enjoy the music that they recognize. And so will play it for longer on average than they would have otherwise. This is like a deep YouTube theory here. But are we willing to spend $20,000 to license a piece of music?
Yeah.
Right? Which is, it costs at least that much. And man, we are really having a fight over this right now, like internally. We're not a fight, but there's lots of discussion of like, oh man, we could get our music director to like record something really great that's public domain, right? That's copyright free. And like that could be a recognizable song, but it's not $20,000 to get just the licensing. Is that is that a good compromise, or is public domain stuff like not as compelling?
Yeah. No, and just to go on that one a little bit real quick, I like maybe a kind of a in between to that, maybe not quite in between, but or even hybrid would be, let's say, because I remember one time I worked with a studio who did this. They reached out. Unfortunately, I can't think of the guy's name, but they reached out to the composer of Secret of Mana to compose one of the tracks or whatever, right?
Yeah,
and so. And that did get some buzz and everything and stuff, and there was some, but the point here is why I can't call it a hybrid, because it's more of name recognition as opposed to maybe a distinct memorable tune or something like that. But regardless, I find that fascinating too, because when you shared that, at least in the spaces that I have been and for how long, that's rarely something that ever has really come up before. But I can totally understand that, because for me personally, when it comes to music, like especially because I don't have as much time for games, I almost live vicariously through the gameplays that I remember from listening to music of stuff that I grew up with, like Final Fantasy and such, or how I explore and understand new indie games even from their music without even playing them. And then that's what's creating that curiosity and stuff. But again, I'm talking about different things from what you shared, but there's this relation to that, and it's just really interesting to hear like what else you guys are digging up from that experimental approach.
Yeah, on the music front, I think Japanese Breakfast did this sort of iconic soundtrack for Sable a few years ago, and the Sable trailer used, I think, the most iconic of those pieces, and it was a huge hit for the trailer, and the views built a tremendous amount of excitement. I think certainly helped sell more copies than an algorithmic model would have predicted for the game otherwise. And there have been a few examples like that. Certainly, very famously, Disco Elysium had Sea Power, formerly British Sea Power, do the soundtrack for that extraordinarily successful collaboration. That's been huge for both the game and the band, which is remarkable. Yeah, we've been talking to an indie band in Scotland that recorded a piece of music that we particularly liked, and we're talking to them about maybe doing an acoustic version for inside of our game. So yeah, it's been
lots of interesting things.
It's a fascinating exploration. I think one of the things that's frustrating for me is there are very few people on this planet who have launched 10 indie games and thus would have any sort of like statistical significance around, hey, we tried this on game 1, 2, and 3. Then we did this for 4, 5, and 6. Then we did this for 7, 8, and 9. And we never told anyone that any of our games were made by the same studio, so that there was no bias in the statistics. That never happens. That's literally never happens, right? Nobody does that. So getting clean data to try and answer these questions, nearly impossible. Whereas in a lot of other marketing, you can't get clean data. but you can get a tremendous amount of insight from seeing how 6 restaurants in the University District of Seattle marketed themselves on Google Maps, right? And be like,
Yes.
okay, this is working, that's not.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like that data or whatever can be problematic for what you just outlined. It's like I actually just the other day had a conversation with someone about that, and it's funny because the more deep or the further out you go, just as like the example you provided, the harder and harder it gets to really pinpoint those things. And I think this relates really well to this idea too, and also going back a little bit when you were mentioning about meeting with all those people and having all these different answers and stuff to things and how they address it. To a point, we know that maybe some of those contributing stories that they're sharing, their experiences, the success that they've had, or even because they're using a proven playbook, that their use case, their experiences is basically case by case. So I'm curious too, like what is it that we can take to actually separate a legitimate principle from just someone else's personal story?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So the way I think about this a lot is I need to look at the cleanest examples I possibly can, which means trying to find games with no pedigree, right? So like, meaning they are not published by Devolver Digital. They are not created by Eric Barone, right? Like there's no one famous associated with it, and there's no sort of existing marketing strength. It has to survive on the trailer and the view of the game and the screenshots and the description alone. Those ones are the ones we've been studying. So Scarlet Deer Inn is a great example. The developers, this is their first game, I think at least their first solo indie game, and there's no publisher associated, strong publisher backing associated with them. They are not getting into a whole bunch of bundles, at launch because they have a bunch of friends in the industry. So those types of independent ones, truly independent, that's what we really look for and focus on, and then try and identify like, hey, here's 100 games like that have launched in the past 24 months. The best 20 of those, the best and the top 20, what's amazing is the top 20 in a set like that is going to be selling north of $5 to $10 million worth of copies each, right? Because games just has a nice ramp like that. Those 20 games, what did they do differently from the other 80?
Yeah.
That's what we try and figure out. And very often you can identify some marketing things that they do differently in addition to some product things that they do. Let's see, this is a complicated story, but I think it'll resonate with you, Andrew, which is that in games marketing, there is a belief from, unfortunately, a ton of indie game developers and people who play games and people in the field that marketing doesn't matter at all, and that the game itself, the product, is the only thing that matters. And to support this theory, there are quite a few games, right? Like you and I can probably name 10 games that did almost no marketing, but the product was so good that they just knocked it out of the park when they launched, right? I think Stardew Valley is a very famous example of this. Balatro is a pretty strong example of this. And those games bias a lot of people to think marketing is for suckers. That's just what you do if you have a bad game. You shouldn't invest in that. Just make your game better, right? And so all the marketing advice in a lot of the indie game subreddits or forums or discords is not, oh yeah, maybe think about licensing a song, because if the song is recognizable and people listen to it longer on YouTube, YouTube will show it to more. There's none of that. Instead, the advice is just make a better product, bro.
Yes.
And
yep.
And here's the thing. They're not 100% wrong either. From my analysis and my experience, like I would say, I think the best quote I ever heard about this, I can't remember who said it, but it was essentially that a 7 out of 10 game, like in terms of quality and how fun it is, how great it is, a 7 out of 10 game can't be saved. And a 10 out of 10 game can't be stopped. And if you have an 8 or a 9, you should do marketing. And that is essentially how I feel about what we're doing, right? We are doing a lot of marketing and investing a bunch there because what if our game is not a 10, but instead of it's a 9 or an 8? If it's a 7, it can't be saved. It doesn't matter how much marketing we do. The first few hundred people who play it and like load it, 1,000 people, they'll leave not great reviews and the game won't go anywhere. But if the game is like, wow, that's really pretty good. It's enjoyable, but it's not Stardew Valley. It's not Balatro. Okay. That's why we have to do marketing.
Yeah.
Like the 8 and the 9.
And I think what that's really good for, though, is like, I know some people might be thinking like, well, how do you determine which it is? It's like, okay, well, there's no real answer to that
you won't know until you launch.
Exactly. But think of it this way. It's almost what you're saying here, Rand, is no different than going into launching a game or going into making a game and saying like, I have hopes of getting a publisher, right? That's the 10 rating, I would say, right? But then, yes, I mean,
a lot of publisher-backed games that are not 10s.
So this is true. What I'm translating in terms of that's a 10 scenario, not necessarily a 10 game.
Yes.
But then if you go back, but a lot of us, I would hope, still are very aware of the odds of getting publisher support and everything because of how hard it is to. The reality is going into it with self-publishing. So in this scenario, essentially, it's like, hey, look, the chances of me hitting this are extremely, let's say, maybe rare. It's not that it isn't possible, but let's be realistic about it. And because of that, then why don't we just consider and do everything we can to kind of like increase that possibility of hitting that number or of getting it within that range?
Yeah. You want to optimize your odds of success without relying on a lottery winning outcome, right?
And not only that, I mean, there's so many variables, there's so many unknowns, and then we're humans, right? We're going to be blind by our own emotions, our bias, and all these other factors at play. It's like everything that we're basing this off of can be so subjective to ourselves and to others that you can't always just. And this is my argument too, is always like, you can't just lead with passion. Passion is so important, but that can't be the only thing because that ultimately can what really hurt you.
Yeah. There's a few things in games marketing, I don't know what you would call it, like pop culture, that really bother me. One of them is, this sort of allergy to doing marketing. I think that's foolish and ridiculous. And also another one that really bothers me, Andrew, is I see games that I think should reasonably sell a couple $1 million worth. Like they are games that are as good as many other games that have done a few $1 million in revenue. Maybe they're not 10s, but they're 7s, they're 8s, they're 9s. And they are put on Steam with no marketing effort. And then they don't even do the one most basic thing that just kills me, which is when we launch our game, there are going to be several thousand people who we've come to know over our lifetimes who will get an email that's like, hey, Andrew, it was really great being on your podcast last year. I have a favor to ask. Would you please go and grab a copy of Snack Bar Studio? It's $20. Next time I see you, lunch is on me. Tell me how you like it. If you love it, we'd love a review. If you hate it, leave a review too. Like, be honest, but help a brother out, right? And like, I can tell you right now, if you ever launch a game, I'll be the first person to buy it, right? I will buy it. I will play it. I will leave you a review because it's just, this is a good thing to do, right? Like it's a good thing to help someone out. It's like buying your friend's book or like, your friend opens up a coffee shop. Like you're going to go get a coffee. Coffee, not much cheaper than games these days. And it kills me. It kills me, man, when I see these games. Some of them look pretty darn decent and they have like 12 reviews, 3 reviews, 9 reviews, 50 reviews. I'm like, you published this and you didn't even ask your friends and family and like coworkers and, like you didn't even email them and say like, hey, can you help me out? I did this thing.
Yeah. And
no one who knows you won't spend $20 on your game, to help you out. It's just...
And I think in that example, it could be this mentality or idea of, and I'm not saying we don't have grit, but grit isn't what it used to be in terms of having that initiative, going that extra mile, and doing those extra things. And I'm not trying to downplay. Everybody's situation's different. I know there's a lot of introverts out there and everything else that makes it challenging. But I think the mentality overall in general has shifted quite a bit to, I think, I might sound bad in this, but too much hope, relying too much hope on things instead of doing the actions, or feeling like what work we did has a huge impact, even though we did nothing else to put it out there. And because I get that, I'll work on tons of things and feel like, hey, why aren't more people gravitating towards that thing I worked on? I put it out there, but why not? It's like, but that it doesn't work that way. And sometimes we forget that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the introvert thing is a great point. And I've seen lots of commentary from folks who are like, the reason I make games is because I don't like talking to people and I don't want to make friends and I don't want to email anyone. And then my one bit of advice for those folks, which I understand there's a lot of people on the spectrum gravitate towards games, which is wonderful. Like, what a great industry that this exists and it like has that propensity to work for those kinds of folks. I would just say, can you make one friend? Do you have one person in your life who could be that person for you? Hey, I am not a marketing person. I'm not an outreach person, but my buddy Amanda, like, she really gets it. I'm going to ask her, like, hey, can I, partner with you? And like, would you help me out with this game and validate things for me and do some marketing and take 10% of the sales and like be my partner on this? And for Amanda, it's like, wait, so you want me to put the trailer on YouTube, then you want me to like get it to reach some people, maybe submit it to some Reddits, and then you would like me to email a few friends. Yes, I can do that. Like, that's not a hard, that is not a hard lift for a lot of people.
And I'm glad you said that too, because I think this is something I've seen with some clients too, where they get this idea where if they're reaching out to other people, and regardless if it's friends or even complete strangers, they have this idea of like, what I'm asking for is too much. It requires funds. It requires like all these other things. And it's like, but the thing here is you don't know the answer to that until you ask it. And then sometimes, depending on who you're at, like the example you just gave with Amanda, it's like, what were you really just asking her? How was she translating what the ask was? It's like this, and this. Like, I could do that in my sleep, right? But we internalize or conceptualize that this ask is
hard for us.
Exactly.
So it must be hard for someone else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's so.
I think this is. I'll give you very salient example of this, Andrew. When we started down this road of this project, I will not lie to you at all. I was scared shitless, truly scared. Like, really, I was. I wanted to do this with all my heart. Like, this was just a dream come true project. And, my previous company, Moz, sold. I wasn't part of it, but they like, after this private equity company bought my previous company, they sent a big check, like a ridiculous check. And so we were like, okay, ridiculous check. Like, for us, it was a lottery winning amount. For a lot of people in tech world, they'd be like, you think that's money? That's nothing. But for us, it was a lot. Right. And so I just remember being like, okay, this project is going to be real. Like, we're going to do it. And we're going to take a significant amount of like our savings that's from this and put it into this project. But there is no way on earth, no way that I could have done it. Geraldine and I could have done it without Nicholas. Nicholas Kraj was like, lead game designer on Assassin's Creed, Just Dance, The Crew, the Warhammer game that came out last year, like just so many titles that have sold bajillions of copies. And he knows everybody in the games world and he's deeply experienced. And so the first like 18 months of this project were, how do we recruit him? Like, how do we convince him to join us, quit his job and take this risk with us? And eventually, over many whinings and dinings, we wore him down, and he agreed to do it. And I think he has not regretted it yet, which is a big part of my goal with the game. Does I don't know, anybody who's listening to this who's like, oh, well, Rand, you built a bunch of companies and like made lots of money and da 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 da. Yeah, well, I still didn't know what the F I was doing. I was still so scared, like so beyond scared to do this. I remember sitting down with a bunch of other like indie founders at an event I was at a few years ago and just being, in near tears where I was like, I just don't know if I can do it. I'm scared that if I don't do it, I'll regret it the rest of my life.
Yep.
And I'm scared that if I do it, it's going to fail. And people are just going to be like, what an idiot. Like, why didn't he just stick to marketing?
Yeah, no, it's
because it's so much pride in it. There's so much.
Yeah.
Anytime you do something artistic, it is, and games are art. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You're putting your heart and soul into that. It's not just another company. I love Alert Mouse. I love SparkToro, but they're products, right? They're businesses. They're designed to provide a service that it's just not the same.
Yeah. I really appreciate you sharing that because, a lot of us listening out there can relate. It resonates with them, feel the exact same way. I mean, and I can relate in different ways, but still that holds true with so many of us out there. And sure, experience can help apply things in certain ways, but especially when it's something new. And yeah, we all have felt this to some degree. So it's really important to hear those stories again, because I think what you just helped remind everybody listening to this is you're not alone, especially if this is your first time around. And even if you've been around a bit, there's still things that will surprise you, and still curveballs that will come.
Let me tell you, my 2 bits of advice. If this is your first time, go find people who are going to cheer for you.
Yeah.
Like unabashedly just cheer for you and be in your corner and like want to hear about it. We were out with a friend of ours last night, and she was like, can I ask about the game? I don't want to pressure you guys, but I'm so curious. This is my favorite thing in the world. Oh my God. What a gift it is to have people who love and support you in that way and want to see your project succeed. Yeah. Go find those people. Build those relationships.
Absolutely.
And similarly, likewise, I think if you can, do yourself a favor and cut out or ignore the people who are not that.
Yeah.
Like this is very personal, but like my dad was never supportive of the companies I built. Like just thought that me dropping out of school and starting Moz was just the worst idea. And yeah, really, he was like, you should he had a job where he like worked for 40 years at Boeing and then retired and got his pension. He was one of these guys and just couldn't understand the entrepreneurial thing, thought it was the worst idea. Thanksgiving sucked, and eventually like we didn't have much relationship the last like 10, 15 years. And yeah, I think that actually helped a lot. You don't need those people in your life, right? So like if you can surround yourself with people who believe in you, ooh, what a difference that makes.
Yeah. And I think it's an important call too, because sometimes when we think about who we're trusting and stuff, and I know we probably alluded to this earlier, but like, have friends on your team and things like that. People are like, well, don't they say in business it's not always, and it depends. But here's the thing. Sometimes I would say and I've realized this recently, where if you're working on something, having someone who has a little bit of bias because they're your friend or whatever, but you know them enough to be like, hey, Andrew, you know what you're doing right now? You're being an idiot because you're whatever reason, right? And then they can call you out on it. Those are the people. But if they're your friends and stuff and they recognize and see what you're doing is something great and they see how you care about it and stuff, you want those people in your corner. And you know what? They're much easier, I think, to get in your corner than, let's say, there's lots of conversations about, get a mentor and stuff. And people are like, well, where do I find one? And how do I go about that? Guess what? Just reach into your own network of friends and see who fits that. Not everybody's going to do it. You don't want people spoon feeding you, but there are going to be those people that will root for you and they're going to guide you. Those are the friends those are the people and they don't have to work on your team either.
And you can go make friends in this world too.
Yeah.
Like
it's one of the most open communities out there, I think, industries.
Close friend of my grandmother's always told a story about how she was like, well, when I was a young woman, I wanted to meet a guy. And I thought, well, I could go to bars. I could go to, some of these dating clubs. I could, you know what? I think I'm going to apply to med school. I'd like to meet a doctor. You know what? She met a doctor. They had a wonderful marriage. Like they had 3 great kids. They had a great life. You can go meet a doctor. If your friend network does not contain lots of people in gaming world, every city in the world has an indie game developer meetup. They've got events. They've got conferences you can go to. There are things you can do for very little money to show up to things. You can go to just events where people play games together. Yep. Find people who share your passions, make your friends that way. It's a great way to do lots of things in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad we touch upon that too, because again, like all these things matter, and especially when we're really trying to nail down what type of decisions to make. Because outside of like, what advice people are offering too, sometimes it's not necessarily the advice that we're getting, it's the guidance and support that we're getting. So we're ultimately making the best decisions for us, for our studio, for our games. You need people who will call you on your good decisions and bad ones. Yes, exactly. So on that note, let's like I know sometimes we really focus on tactics. We've drilled it. You've provided some great examples, drilling into some specifics and stuff of like what things to consider based off of what people have been telling you. But from all that, what would you say, and even your past experience too, it definitely could apply here, I would think, is what are a few marketing principles you think actually hold true no matter what game someone is making?
Yeah, excellent question. Very happy to get into this. Biggest one is positioning. If you can possibly avoid it, don't make a game for everyone and don't make a game exclusively for yourself. Your game is art, but it is commercial art. It needs to, unlike a painting that you might hang in a gallery, like in order to reach its audience, it must be appealing. And I think one of the best things that you can do is to design your product to appeal to a specific group of people. Like if you identify a genre or two and 5 or 6 games, maybe 20 or 30 games that are in the same world, appeal to the same people. And then you can figure out, why do those things appeal to people? Who do they turn on? Who do they turn off? Our game is not for everyone. We won't try to be for everyone. We are going to try to be amazing for this small group of people who loved these 5 titles in this genre. If you love those, and hopefully you picked ones that sold a little bit, now build something. And then take that positioning and carry it forward in your marketing. And what I mean by that is, it is incredibly important, and we've seen tons of games just fall apart here, where they essentially make marketing content, trailers, videos, images, like presentations, that appeal to a ton of people who are not their customers, not their right audience. And then when the game comes out, one of 2 things happens. One, those people weren't right customers, so they don't buy it. They just like the video and the Instagram posts and, commented and were like, oh my God, this looks so great. But they weren't the right audience. Or worse, you appeal to people with your marketing who won't actually like the game, and they leave you negative reviews, and your first 50 reviews look bad, and so nobody else buys the game, and you're sunk right from the get-go. Though this is why positioning is so absolutely critical for games. It is the one marketing principle that I would apply over everything else.
Yeah, I love that too. So, but I would say that you essentially described positioning and alignment with the audience stuff. And I mean, because it's funny when I back in the days when I was really into SEO and paid advertising and stuff, alignment was such a key thing, right? And because you're talking about like, what keywords are you doing? Okay, is it a broad keyword or is it a very specific keyword, right? And then you tie that into the whole user experience, which is, are they looking for this exact thing? Okay, yes. All right, so you're serving an ad that talks about that specific thing. Yes. They get to the landing page. Are you still connecting all the dots for them? So they're like, yep, the whole time I've came across here. And it's funny because that process I just described to you is how I learned how to apply things to games too, where it's the same thing. It's like, hey, that trailer you just showed, is that positioned in a way that says, this is what I'm delivering in the experience. And then it goes to the Steam page. Is this still aligning, right? It's that same exact process. And again, what you said is like the key things there is that, which is so important, is that positioning. And then just following through with that promise you're giving. And it's so important, I would say, to go back and look at those things, because a lot of us, we get so we either develop in a vacuum, which I always suggest try not to do that. It can be easy to do without realizing it, but remove yourself and be like, hey, what I think this game is that still being perceived? And how am I positioning? How am I sharing it with other people? Are they still seeing the same thing I'm seeing? And if there's a disconnect, we got to fix it, because at the end, that player has to follow all the way through and be like, yep, that's what I was pitched. That's what I kept following for. And that's what I ultimately was the experience that was promised to me. Awesome.
Yep. I mean, I think that being able to describe your product, game or otherwise, succinctly in a way that both resonates and makes a promise that the product fulfills is incredibly valuable. And yeah, if you have a roguelike city builder that you're advertising, but then people start playing it and they're like, this feels more like a narrative action game. And you're like, yeah, but there are city building elements. You've lost, right? Like,
yeah.
If it doesn't feel to them the way you described it, you're missing out. So again, easy advice here. Oh my God. Show your game very early and very often to lots of people, have lots of them play it, and then ask them, be like, I don't want to describe it. You tell me, what did you just play?
Yeah. And I think that's key too, that you just said there, because essentially early testing your ideas and everything else, that's all giving you data points, right? It's the process of validation. And from those data points, I would say, and I'm curious how you're going about this now, and it might be too early at the stage you're in, but with those data points, you can create your own playbook. So has there been anything that you guys have been doing to kind of start building your own playbook?
Oh, yeah. I do take this advice. I think we probably shown very early builds of the game to more than 100 people of all ages, people who play games, people who don't play games, kids, adults, had them sit down with a controller in front of my laptop when we're like visiting a city and we're hanging out with our friends. We're like, hey, let's bring over the game, like play this. And they're like, I never use a controller. And some people are like, oh, I'm great at this. And, and then, we just see, right? We see what works. You can see when people's eyes light up and they're like, this is amazing. And when they're just like, oh yeah, this is fun. You guys did a really nice job. They're like being kind, right? They're not that into it. But when they're like, oh yeah,
yeah, really,
right? Then they're into it, and that's what you want.
Awesome. And it's like, yeah, there's so many different ways to go about that. I think that's the key one there, because, as I say, find the fun. Is it fun for these people? How are they reacting, engaging? Don't ask questions. Just let them experience it and show that. But then the same thing happens in other things, which are, I think, a little bit more tangible sometimes, or easier when we're like, you post on social media, and then maybe, hey, if by chance it goes viral, or if it didn't, that's where you can get more analytical, but the process is essentially still the same. And then from the data and everything else, and then you, like, as you probably have already been doing and know, that's how you start putting together your own playbook, and taking, let's say, the anecdotes or other success stories with a grain of salt, and sometimes, and hey, it depends. And if it's a good fit and stuff for our project, then we'll try it. We'll, like you said, those two paths, we'll test it out. We'll experiment, or we'll use what we have available to us to make those best decisions.
Exactly.
Awesome. Hey, I know we're coming on time here, Rand, and it has been a pleasure. But before we go, we talked a lot today. I mean, is there anything that you would highlight for listeners as a key takeaway?
One thing I would think about, in addition to that positioning and alignment discussion that we had, which I think is a really big one, is when you do your marketing, your audience, and we have found this for sure, and every game we've studied has this as well, your audience is going to be different than other games' audiences. And so copying exactly someone else's playbook is not going to be the right path. I think this is why there's so many paths in games, but figuring out, hey, here are the roughly 50 sources of influence that are in the world of games. Which ones have resonated with those 6 games that are a lot like mine, that attract the same kinds of players? Is it, was it a bunch of social stuff, short form video on Instagram and TikTok and, Reels? Was it longer YouTube stuff? Was it traditional press and media? Was it events and showcases? Was there a particular one that really resonated? Was it a guerrilla marketing campaign? Was it bundling with other games? Like whatever it was, there's so many of these things. Go figure out what that is. Publishers too, right? Sometimes it's a publisher. They have the right list, and like that, the announcement goes to the right people who subscribe to that publisher and all the games that they put out. Go figure it out. Yeah. Go figure that out. Go do your audience research, discover your audience's sources of influence, be present in those places with your message that's going to resonate.
Awesome. Can't thank you enough for that tip and everything. And hey, Rand, for anyone out there who wants to follow Snack Bar and everything else, or potentially even connect with you, what are some links, please, if you could provide them to them, we could share them in the show notes.
Yeah, so Snack Bar is not yet formally announced with a release date or a trailer, but you can go to snackbarstudio.com and there's an email waitlist. You'll get an email as soon as we do announce that, which will be later this year. And then for folks who are curious and want to connect with me on other marketing topics of all kinds, I am Rand Fishkin on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Rand, it has really been a pleasure, and also exciting to hear your perspective and how you're going about this journey. And I'm sure a lot of us, including myself, will follow you and just keep on trucking. It's great to see what you're doing.
We should do this again after the game launches, and we'll find out
whether down
my marketing advice was any good.
Yeah, awesome. Let's revisit that again. And thanks again for your time. It's been great.
You bet. Take care, Andrew.
Ciao. Hey, everyone. Thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. Show notes for this episode can be found by visiting rengenmarketing.com, the number episode of the show. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saw for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.